Sacred attention therapy is an approach to liberation. The first liberation is from the conditioned self, psychology of early life. The second liberation is from the realization of the true nature, the fulfillment of oneself as a personality. And the third liberation is the liberation into the life of spirituality and spiritual practice. Sacred attention therapy, or SAT, is a meta-psychology because it embraces not only the physical, emotional, mental and energetic aspects of the human being, but also the spiritual and the transcendental. Therefore, it is uniquely placed to be an applied psychology through counselling and psychotherapy in the 21st century, in which human beings are more complex than ever before.
Welcome to the fifth in a series of interviews with Richard Harvey. My name is Rob Meager. Today's interview will discuss the lecture, To Realize Consciousness, Merging with the Divine, from the Ternion talks. This lecture is available in written form in Bodhi Ocean, an ebook that is available on the books page of the Sacred Attention Therapy website. You can listen to the full recording of many of these lectures on the lectures page. And lastly, you can view many other interviews on the videos page of the Sacred Attention Therapy website or on our YouTube channel. The URL for our website is www.sacredattentiontherapy.com. And on our website, you can click on the YouTube channel icon to view our YouTube channel. And now a little bit of background about Richard Harvey. Richard is a psychospiritual psychotherapist and spiritual teacher. His work emerged out of the human potential movement of the 1970s. He trained with many teachers in humanistic and transpersonal approaches. He is the founder of Sacred Attention Therapy, a radical new approach to inner work for the 21st century that proposes a three-stage model of human awakening. Richard is the author of Your Essential Self and Flight of Consciousness, among many other publications. He works with people all around the world, and his forthcoming book, and to be published later this year, is entitled Your Sacred Calling. And it's now my pleasure to welcome Richard Harvey to the call.
Greetings.
Greetings. Nice to be with you.
And with you.
So we're here to discuss what is the final lecture in the Ternion Talk series, To Realize Consciousness, Merging with the Divine. And you ask, I think, a fundamentally important question early on in the lecture. And here's a quote leading into that question. If there is nothing mandatory in any teaching, and given the huge variety of ways we have to realize consciousness, then what is the essential ingredient? What is absolutely crucial in our attempts to align and ultimately merge ourselves with the divine? End quote. And so what is or are those essential ingredients? What's absolutely crucial in our attempts to align and merge ourselves with the divine?
I think the The absolute essential, although it has many ways in which to get to it, is to engage and merge and be one with reality itself. Now, reality itself comes under many different words, which could be seen as nuances or could be seen as descriptions or different angles or perspectives on the truth. But in reality, the truth doesn't have any angles or perspectives. It's absolute. So the answer, of course, is that one leads one's life from the heart, that place in which the guru or the divine person stands, and one lives as the spiritual teacher, the spirit, the master, or the avatar. In other words, we are spiritual in our intrinsic nature, and the teachings and the relationship with the spiritual master, the books, the sacraments, the rituals, the ceremonies, the sadhana, the whatever it is that we get to in the relative world of time and space in our sacred spiritual day, is merely occupations that are aimed towards the realization of the heart. When we realize the heart, and we mean, of course, not the physical heart as such, neither do we mean the heart of love in the sense of interdependent or codependent or relationships of the heart as we usually think of them, but the heart is whole. The heart is a unity in which everybody participates. True love then is love of all things and all people at all times, in all conditions and circumstances, on the journey to illumination. So this is the thing that all the religions and the spiritual ways have in common, insofar as their authenticity and their sincerity in regard to leading humankind to freedom, and it is be one with reality itself, and that reality is truth, that reality is love, that reality has no object, it is total.
And so you go on to make an interesting comment in regard to this spiritual attainment. You say, as you climb the slippery pole of spiritual practice and attainment, you learn to recognize, then you automatically recognize where people climbing below you are coming from. And what I wanted to ask, Richard, is why is the pole of spiritual practice and attainment, quote, slippery? End quote.
It's not, if I recall, I could be wrong here, but I think the image, the idea of it being slippery comes from an image from Dom John Main in his book, The Way of Unknowing, I think it's called. And it's curious that he uses this metaphor of a pole anyway, because you have the same thing in ancient Zen stories. So I was drawn to it for this sort of correlation. But in direct answer to what you're saying, the pole is slippery, and it is slippery because there's this matter of integration and stabilization, you see. In other words, both in psychological work and in spiritual work, we can have breakthroughs, we can have transcendent experiences, we can have ecstatic moods, and in steps towards freedom and liberation that are partial, we can have all kinds of overblown experiences, or even genuine spiritual events in our life. They in and of themselves are not actually enough. We know this, really. I mean, we just do the research. We can read around, we can see what's happened to people who've had extraordinary out of body and interdimensional experiences of spiritual nature, at least, or exalted human experiences of feeling and heart and a refined vividness of experience. The question is, or the one that's always interested me, is what happens when that fades, because that was certainly my experience. These experiences fade, however exalted they are. You may meet God, you may meet your dead mother or your dead lover, or you may have an explosion of heart and feel at one with the universe. But the question is, 10 days later, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's happening? So this is slippery pole. You attain, and you hold on, if you will, to that experience, and then you're liable to slip down, you see, and then you have the frustration of going for it again. The question then comes up, which interested me, is how do we hold on, or how do we integrate, really? Because we neither slide back nor do we frantically hold on, of course. We carry on up. And so this is a very good question. What will enable me to build on my psycho-spiritual attainments or progress or deepening? What will enable those events, those experiences to stick? And of course, conversely, for me to let go and carry on.
You offer a call to discover our inherent inner wisdom. And here's what you share. Quote, "Great wisdom is within you inherently, since you are born a human being. It is almost trite. It has been said so many times, but try to hear it as if for the first time. Great wisdom is within you. Now, my view is that there is nothing, absolutely nothing at all, as important as discovering this wisdom and orienting your life to it firmly, thoroughly, as quickly as possible." End quote. Richard, what's the hurry? What's so imperative about finding our inner wisdom?
We're human beings, complacent. It may take us 12 years, as opposed to any other animal form on the planet, of dependency, to become in any way self-sufficient, able to look after ourselves. And the question we have to ask is, why are human beings so incredibly remedial in relationship to the rest of the animal kingdom on the planet that we need 10, 12 years of being looked after? It's very hard for us to fend for ourselves without that time, whereas certain animals take seconds, minutes, or weeks in which to become self-supporting. And I think the reason is because, unlike animals, we're self-reflecting. And because we're self-reflecting, we have the abilities and the skills inherently, which we can cultivate, to reach a state of self-illumination. We ourselves can direct ourselves toward reality, towards the heart. Unlike animals who are in an animal consciousness, the heart of the dog, the heart of the cow, the heart of the rabbit, and so on. A certain animal consciousness which has of a certain dimension, but not mostly and generally of a self-reflecting and then willful attaining nature. So if we are to fulfill those latent tendencies inside ourselves, it's very important that we're wary of laziness, tardiness, self-pride, complacency, apathy. I said laziness, possibly. All of these things, because we have that tendency in any way. lion may be the king the king of the animal kingdom, but in the end, we're able to wreck the planet or to do wonderful things here. In a sense, we may think we're in charge. Again, delusions. So delusions and illusion and all kinds of entropy sort of surround us. Therefore, the religious and spiritual teachers have told us for thousands of years, and I quote the Zen document, but I could quote other things, train as if your hair is on fire. And you can find comparable remarks in the other disciplines, but train as if your hair is on fire is to say it must be immediate. You must act as if this is the final moment. You must, as the Tai Chi master says, place your foot on the ground of Gaia and not expect there to be anything to either side of it. Any other footfall may not be supported. You must feel that immediacy, and you must feel that vividness, the crucialness. This breath shouldn't be taken for granted. This heartbeat, this vision, this occasion to be able to talk about these things are precious, and that's what makes them sacred.
We began this interview by talking about, the way to consciousness. You shared it's through the heart. But you offer more about different options to realize consciousness by sharing the following. All paths other than the one you choose are invalid from your personal point of view. Not invalid in the sense that comparatively they are not viable options for other seekers, but invalid in the sense that you have no relationship or wish for a relationship with them. And so my question is, so will any path work so long as you are devoted to it?
I think that's so. I mean, that's more or less the case. It depends on your devotion, it depends on your sincerity and your application and your consistency, primarily, without doubt. When I say your, I mean the seeker or the aspirant or the seeker after truth. However, the encouragement is in place, well known by this time. The path should be the one that engages your heart. And part of the mystery of that is that the path that engages the heart may not engage the mind, it may therefore not engage the preference, or reflect any aspect of ego perspective, in fact. Hence, you may find yourself following a teaching or a teacher who, from a cultic point of view, or a sense of where they are, how they are, the trappings of the teaching or the school, isn't necessarily to your liking, even. It's well known, and it may even be partially necessary, because otherwise there would be a sort of ego engagement with it. I mean, the outcome is inherent in the beginnings, in how you start. So I would say you follow the heart with path, the path with heart. That is the one that engages you in spite of your preferences or your individual personal tendencies. And then just one other footnote. I've lived long enough now to notice almost a faddism or a fashion about spiritual teachings. When I was, let's say, 40 years now, there was definitely a sort of, what do you call those things in the stadium, a sort of competitive, but whatever they have in football, when some team beats another team and someone's going to be up here and then there's the second best. And nobody thought anything about that. Absolutely. No one even considered when Osho criticized Muktananda that it took away some of credentials. Conversely, when the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi would talk about other paths, and conversely, when, and on and on and on, all these spiritual teachers, and some then coming to the West, to America, and so on, some were more generous than others. But very often there was this feeling of, I will criticize the giving of the mantra, for example, or I will criticize the way in which the spiritual teacher is conducting himself. No one thought about it at all. These days, there's much more of an allowing sense. A sort of, everybody, there's all these ways, and they somehow can be eclectic, and we can all join in some kind of a way and all come together. And I have to say that in my lineage, as it were, from my history or from my younger days, that was quite usual to me. And sometimes this merging of the paths is quite difficult for me, possibly because of my age, but possibly because you can always accentuate the differences just the same as you can accentuate the commonality of spiritual paths. And in fact, they're both true. Which position you therefore adopt is merely a position.
Mm-hmm. But you go on to share, Richard, in this lecture, the idea of a spiritual junkie, and I bring it up because it's something that you've talked about a number of times in previous lectures. And here's how you bring it up in this lecture. You say, and yet every time you change paths, you are beginning all over again. Every time. And every time you are dallying with the wisdom of another way or spiritual path, becoming fascinated, inspired, or even interested, you are beginning to follow your desire, your restlessness for change, for variety, for novelty, like a husband looking at another woman in the street and lusting after her. End quote. So my question is searching for the, quote, right teaching part of the path to realize consciousness, or is it merely a distraction?
I think searching, in the sense that we perhaps usually think of it, has to be released, it has to be transcended, shall we say, for the simple reason that the egoic person looking for a viable spiritual path is almost certainly not going to look to engage with the path to its detriment. And that is, without doubt, what engaging with the true spiritual path, the annihilation of the small self. And so if that search is predicated on the small self or the ego, what do you expect? Find something that you like the look of, someone you like the look of, and a practice that you particularly like. It has to be something more challenging than that. And therefore search in the usual sense is not relevant. Far better to, this is my teaching on this, you center yourself in the heart and you prepare yourself and you make yourself ready. Because time and time again I've seen that the teacher really is there when you're ready. And the teaching is there when you're ready. It's not so very far away. It's as far away as your heart is from it. Therefore, deepen in your heart, deepen in your intensity, deepen in your immediacy and the profound engagement that you have so that you're ready when you meet it. And in fact, that preparation will provoke the appearance in the realm of time and space of the divine.
When you come to the end of the lecture, or by the time you come to the end of the lecture, you start to focus on the idea of truth in the context of to realize consciousness. And here's what you say on the matter. To realize consciousness, you must love truth more than life itself. And as with so many things in the spiritual realms, that we have to revision beyond selfishness, possession, and egocentricity. Love is not love as we habitually think of it. And so what I want to ask is, can truth be found through cognitive processes, through thought? Or is truth beyond thought?
Truth cannot be apprehended or discovered through cognitive processes. Truth is beyond this world. And when you meet it or you invite it into your life, the experience of it is absolute. It's that experience that many people, I think, can relate to or identify with, and that is the one where you're so absolutely swimming in the ocean of something bigger than yourself that you have no desire or need or attachment or clinging to what seems like the mediocre events of life itself. You're not concerned. In other words, the things you're usually overwhelmed with worry and anxiety and consideration about are of no longer of any importance whatsoever. None. Because truth displaces all of that. Truth is the matrix in which all of these events are arising and dissipating. And truth, therefore, is the container, it's the matrix, it's the holding, it can't even be spoken of. Even now we may be using cognitive means to speak and to analyze and to somehow describe truth, but truth truly isn't the described. It cannot be described. There is no descriptive means to truth. Therefore, the thinking mind cannot apprehend truth. It can't be done. But you know it when you're there.
I've heard it recently described within the past week as truth is the expression of the soul, which in turn is the expression of God within an individual.
Nice.
Which I thought was quite beautiful.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And so I'm going to invite us to leave it there. This interview, like so many of them, feels like it went by in a flash. And so when we come together the next time, Richard will begin another lecture series. And I'll be honest, I can't remember what the name of the lecture is. It's the very last one in this whole series.
Substantia.
Substantia, that's right. That's right. I look forward to exploring it with you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
For now.